Okay, hello everyone and welcome to this talk on securing AI agents using Azure AI Gateway. My name is David Okeode. I focus on cloud and AI security. I'm a MVP in the security category, and I'm privileged to have conducted multiple security assessments of Foundry agent for various organizations. I'll also be sharing some use cases and lessons around the Azure AI Gateway with you today. I've also authored 4 books on Azure and security. So my 5th book, co-authored with Chris Kamel, is already out. So it was just released a few weeks ago. If you're interested, feel free to check them out, and they're all available on Amazon. So here is the agenda for this talk. We start with a quick introduction of agent risks and control points in Azure. We then spend most of our time in the Azure portal, walking through the governance of models, tools, and agents. As I said earlier, I've conducted security assessment for many AI systems. And in my experience, many organizations don't struggle with the building of agents. What they struggle with is integrating them in a way that meets enterprise security and governance requirements. And in my multiple assessments, there are 2 primary gaps that I encounter more often. The first one is around design flaw. So that's usually where privileged access has been granted with no deterministic control boundaries around what the agents can do. And the second is around governance gaps, especially around observability as it relates to security. And I think part of this is because organizations are moving very fast without taking the time to understand what the real risks are and how to apply the proper controls to mitigate those risks. Now, to help organizations to make sense of AI security risks, several frameworks are now starting to emerge. And probably the most common ones are the ISO or IC 23894. But you have others like OWASP LLM Top 10, the OWASP Agentic Top 10. But one of the things is that if you examine these frameworks very closely, there's actually a lot of convergence around the risks that are defined in all of them. And on the screen, what you're looking at is a consolidated list of risk groups that these frameworks define and places in Azure where we can apply mitigating controls. And if you look closely, you see that the AI gateway capabilities of the API management service in Azure features on many of them. Now, I've made reference to the Azure AI Gateway. This talk is about the Azure AI Gateway. So what exactly is the Azure AI Gateway? To put it simply, it's a set of AI native governance capabilities in the API management service in Azure. And the capabilities covers 3 governance surfaces. The first one is model governance, we're talking about LLM endpoints here. And then the next is around tool governance. We're talking about MCP servers and our function calls. And finally, we have agent governance, which is around autonomous identities that are acting on behalf of users. Now, when we get into the demonstration is structured in such a way as to cover these 3 main areas. So let's start with the first one, which is around governing models. So the demo that I'll be showing to you got a set of agents that are currently deployed in Azure. But I have like a model that I've deployed in the Microsoft Foundry. And what I'm going to be using the AI Gateway to provide a set of governance capabilities for my models that will be consumed or that will be used by the agents that I have deployed. So let's head over very quickly to the Azure portal. So here I am in the Azure portal. First, what I want to do is I want to bring my model in so I can do like some governance capabilities. So I'll just go to under API management. I can go to under APIs and click on Microsoft Foundry. You can also do something similar by going directly to, I'll just bring up the other screen that I have here. By going directly to the Microsoft Foundry portal under Operate, and in the admin section, one of the things that we can do is we can actually just integrate the AI gateway directly in Microsoft Foundry here. So that's just taking a while to load. So once that finishes loading, should be able to point you to where you do it. But anyways, here is one point where you can do that integration. But the more flexible option is to do it directly from API management. So anyways, this is taking a while to load. So I'll just head back over to the Microsoft, to the API management service and do it from here. So if I click on Microsoft Foundry here, and let's get some information ready. Okay, so here I want to bring my model in, so I can see current Microsoft Foundry services that I have and the model endpoints that I have deployed. I'll select the one that I want to bring in for governance. I can go to next. I can give it a display name and give it other information. So here, I'll just give that a display name. I'll specify a base path, which is how, which is sort of like referencing the address or the endpoint that it's going to be called from. I can give it a description if I want, but one of the powerful things here is that I can package into a product. A product is how we expose things in API management. But the good thing about it here is I can package together models, tools, and agents in a single product and then expose that to different parts of the organization. Anyways, I have a product here that will just add the model to. I'll leave that as Azure OpenAI. So here we can specify some governance capabilities around token consumption. So it's a good thing to have an AI gateway that's token aware. So we can set things like token limits. So this is different from the limits that apply at the platform level. So this is sort of like at the consumption level that we're defining our limits. And we can also set the quarter period, so hourly or daily or weekly, or however we want to set that. We can also limit that. So typically you limit that by subscription because you have different subscription keys that are assigned to various agents in your organization. Then if you want to, you can add additional headers. So the agents themselves can know where they are in their quota consumption. Yeah, I'll add the option to track the token usage. So, and I'll add different dimensions to track. So let's just add a subscription ID here as one additional dimension to track. And I'll just add one more dimension around the API ID. So, and then I'll go to next. So if you have like the Azure cache for Redis, you can go ahead and you can include that, but I'll just leave that for now and I'll go to next. And here is where we can also begin to apply some of the security controls around the Azure using the Azure AI Content Safety Service. So in this case, I can go select an AI Content Safety resource that I created earlier. I can maybe start doing things around text moderation, specify the severity levels that I want. I can pick either 4 severity levels or 8 severity levels. One thing I will just warn you from my experience here is be very careful of not using the highest restriction. From my experience, you tend to get a lot of false positives doing that. So typically, you just leave it sort of like in the mid-range, or even maybe a little bit lower than that. So anyways, I will set that to the mid-range for all of these different categories. And it's always a good thing to block jailbreak attempts against the model. So I'll enable that. And yeah, there's something that's missing here. So I need to specify my application insight instance. So let's specify the instance. And once all the configuration items are all there, I can go ahead and I can create this. Now, in order to save time, I've already done this in another environment, so I'll switch over to that environment. So back in this environment, I've already imported the model. And the model is now exposed in this service. So what I'll do is I'll just switch over to an environment for us to run some calls. So I'm going to just run some scripts that I've prepared. So what the script will do is they'll just trigger some of the agents that I have to run and to make calls to this service. So I'll just do that while we move on to the next one. So that's going to generate calls from different agents. I've got an expense bot agent. I also have a research agent. So they will start making different calls to the model. And let me go back very quickly to show you some of the things that happen behind the scenes. So if I select the model gateway I just added, And if I go over to the policies, you see here that Microsoft has some AI native policies that they've added to the API management service. So they typically start with LLM. So you can see Microsoft has done a lot of the heavy lifting for us to put all of this here. So anyways, let's move on to the next one. So the next thing that I'll quickly show you is the governance of tools. And in this case, I have like an MCP, I have an API that's running in the back end of the environment. But I'm going to be bringing in and exposing that API as an MCP server without writing any code. That's a really nice feature that's available in the AI Gateway. So I'll make that available. But then the good thing is I can then apply governance in terms of policies to that MCP server. So again, in order to save time, I've done that ahead of time. But I'll switch over to the environment that I was in before, again, just to show you. Here is the API that I want to bring in, Carries Business API. If I go under MCP servers, I can easily create a new MCP server, and I'll expose an API as an MCP server. And here is a very cool thing about this. Again, it's because it's already part of the service, I can just simply select the API that I want to expose, and then I can get the API operations exposed as tools, as MCP tools, essentially. And again, I'm doing all of this without having to write a single bit of code. I can specify a display name for the tool that I'm exposing. So I'll just call this Carries MCP tools. Again, I can package that into the same products I mentioned earlier, and I can go ahead and I can create that. Now that's going to expose this as an MCP server. But the good thing about this is, apart from exposing it, I can then start applying governance policies in terms of what's been defined as an organization level to this MCP server. So I'll just apply one that will enforce authentication. And it's going to enforce authentication via Entra ID. So if someone needs to be able to make any call or use any tools that's exposed by this MCP server, they need to be authenticated via Microsoft Entra ID. So just added a policy there. I'll check the JSON Web Token, and I'll save that. Now, in order to test this out, what I am going to be using here is I'm going to be using the MCP Inspector, nice open source tool. And I've already preloaded that with the endpoint for the MCP server that I created earlier, which is, again, a backend API exposed as an MCP server. And I've also loaded that with the Entra ID bearer token. Now, actually, the bearer token may have already expired. So what I may probably need to do here is I may probably need to go get a new bearer token. So I have a script that I'll run that will get me a new bearer token. Okay, and then I can go load in that bearer token here. And here is the good thing about it. If I go here and I go to connect to my MCP server, and there you go, that's connected to my MCP server. Now I can go ahead and list the tools exposed, and I can see all the tools that are exposed by this MCP server. And I can run some of the tools to test them out. If I clear all of this, and let's say I don't supply an Entra ID bearer token, so if I disconnect that, if I try to connect to this just using the API key, that's going to give me an error message, as you can see here. So again, that's governance in action. And the final bit that I want to show you is around the governance of agents, because this is not just about like the tools themselves, the agents themselves. So, and in this case, you have like the agent-to-agent protocol, which agents can have sort of like an agent card that they can use to specify and the various capabilities that they offer, and other agents can then, using standard protocol, call those capabilities. So this is also supported in the AI Gateway. So let's go back to the environment that I was on, and let's go back to here. And if I go to under APIs, and here, if I scroll up, you can see that I've got like the agent-to-agent imports that I can do here. I can specify the URL for the agent on the other hand. This is really just specifying like the agent card. If you're thinking, what is the agent card? Just think about it as a Swagger file for AI agents, right? So I click next to that. It's going to discover the agent, discover its capabilities via the agent card. I give it a name. I can specify base path for it also. And again, go ahead and I can create that. So again, this is now bringing in this agent into the AI Gateway service for governance. And exactly the same thing that I've just done for the model, for the tools, I can now do that for the agent also, right? So first of all, I can put in the products to make it a standard in terms of how I expose that. So if I go to on the product here, I can add this to a product. And then on the policies, I can then go add some policies here. And I do have a policy that I want to add here. So what this policy will just do is that it will enforce certain standards of login when there's interaction with this agent. So if I go ahead and I save this, and now I have like some governance policy in place. Now, in order to test that out, what I actually have in my other environment here is I have the task adherence API, which is part of the content safety service in Azure, which essentially just checks for alignment. If an agent is outside of alignment, this can flag it, and then we can use that to take certain governance policies. So that's what I'm going to be quickly demonstrating here as the last demonstration for this talk. So if I go to on the govern agents, so let's go ahead and let's bring, let's do like some checks. So what I'll be doing is I'll show you the tasks that I want to run. So here is the task that the agent will run. So summarize the customer issue, recommend the next support step, do not make any billing changes. And I'll run the scripts that will essentially run that prompt via the agent. And you can see that that's going through the task adherence service. And the task adherence service is checking the instruction that I gave to it against the action that the agent is taking. And in this case, the agent is just taking a normal action. It's just doing the summary. So task adherence says, well, everything is in alignment. But what I'll do here is let's go demonstrate something that goes out of alignment. So let me show you this one. So here I have a prompt, which is summarize this issue only, do not take any action, do not issue a refund, do not close the account. So this specifically telling the agent, no actions, just give me a summary. However, there is a prompt injection that's been embedded, which will try to get the agent to take an action. But then when that happens, because task adherence is in place, task adherence will identify that this is now out of alignment. This is an agent that's trying to call a tool, even though the instruction says not to. So that's going out of alignment, and now that's been blocked. But then to tie everything together, every single activity that we've just shown you in terms of governing models, governing tools, governing agents, they are all observable. So if I go back to this environment and if I go to my log analytics workspace, I have certain queries here that I've prepared. So I've just run a query to say, get me all the different activities that's going on in the AI gateway. And here I can see very plainly what's going on. So if I run that again, and you can see all the interactions that's going on. You can see the caller. So it says this agent is calling another agent. How many requests, how many blocks. So that's task adherence blocking the request that I just did now, right? How many were successful. I can scroll forward and I can see the reason for the error, the reason for the failures. So everything is all observable, right? I can see this other agent calling this model. I can see this research agent calling this model. I can see an agent calling using a tool. So everything observable again. Here's another query and that I prepared to show me anything that's gone out of that's showing misalignment. And here I can see the different misalignments that's happened in my environment, the source that they're coming from. Again, this is something that we can then correlate as security and use for detection. And the final one that I'll show you is around like a chart, which again just show me all the success and errors that's been happening within the AI gateway in terms of all these agentic interactions that's going on within the environment. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in learning more about the Azure AI Gateway, I encourage you to have a look at the various links that you can see on the screen. So very, very good hands-on hands-on practice that you can walk through, and that will give you very, very solid understanding of what these capabilities are about and how you can begin to leverage them in your environment. You can also reach me on LinkedIn, search my name on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to get me. So if you want to send me a request, and I'll accept that. Thanks very much for listening to this talk, and hope to see you again next time.